Welcome to Fatter Wallet's Book Summaries. Today, we are diving into a book that, honestly, totally changed the game for how people look at the world. It's Freakonomics by Stephen Levitt and Levitt Dubner, and its whole promise is to explore the hidden side of everything. We're going to use the tools of economics to answer some pretty weird questions. So let's just get right into it.
So, to get us started, how about this classic question right from the book? What could a school teacher and a sumo wrestler possibly have in common? I know, it sounds like the beginning of a really strange joke, right? But the answer reveals one of the most powerful forces that shapes pretty much all of our lives. You see, this book isn't really about money or the stock market in the way you might think. What it argues is that economics, it's really just a powerful toolkit. It's a set of tools for figuring out why people do the things they do. It's all about stripping away those easy, surface-level explanations and using cold, hard data to see how the world actually works, not just how we wish it did. And this quote right here, it really gets to the heart of the whole thing. Morality represents the way that people would like the world to work, whereas economics represents how it actually does work. We might hope that people do the right thing just because it's the right thing to do. But Freakonomics shows that more often than not, people are just responding to incentives, the rewards and punishments all around us. The book's big idea is that if you can just figure out the incentives, you can understand almost anything. But here's the catch with incentives. They don't always work the way we think they will. In fact, sometimes they can go spectacularly wrong. Let's dig into a perfect example of this that the book talks about. It involves a daycare center. Okay, so picture this. A group of economists decided to study a few daycare centers in Israel. And these daycares had this nagging problem. Parents were always late picking up their kids. We're talking about an average of 8 late pickups every single week, which you can imagine left the poor teachers just stuck waiting around after their shifts were over.
So they came up with what sounds like a pretty logical solution, right? A simple incentive. They announced a small fine, just $3, for any parent who was more than 10 minutes late. The thinking was pretty straightforward. Create a penalty, a little disincentive to make people be on time. Totally makes sense, doesn't it?
Well, wrong. After they introduced the fine, the number of late pickups didn't go down. Not at all. It skyrocketed to 20 per week. That's more than double what it was before. The whole plan completely backfired. So what on earth happened?
See, the fine didn't just add a penalty. It completely changed the game. It replaced one kind of incentive with a totally different one. Before, parents had a moral incentive to be on time. They felt guilty about making the teachers wait. But that little $3 fine, it turned the whole thing into an economic transaction. It took away all the guilt and just made it a simple fee. Suddenly, for just $3, you could basically buy the convenience of being late.
So that daycare story is a great example of how incentives can go wrong by accident. But incentives can also push people to do the wrong thing on purpose. And this leads us to the dark side of incentives: cheating. Which, finally, brings us back to our sumo wrestlers.
Okay, check out this data, because this is where it gets really interesting. In the world of sumo wrestling, a wrestler needs to get 8 wins out of 15 matches in a tournament to keep his high rank and his high salary. So imagine a wrestler with a 7-win, 7-loss record going into his final match. He is absolutely desperate for that win. Now, what if he's up against a guy with an 8-win, 6-loss record? That guy's already safe. He's got nothing on the line. Now, based on all their past fights, you'd expect the desperate guy to win, maybe 49% of the time? But the data shows something shocking. They actually win almost 80% of the time. A statistical jump that big, it can really only point to one thing. The wrestlers are making a deal. It's a classic, I'll scratch your back, you scratch mine. The guy who's already safe lets the desperate guy win. And why would he do that? Because he knows that down the road, when he's the one who needs a win, the favor will be returned. The incentive to protect their rank and their paycheck is just so powerful that it's practically built in to encourage cheating. All right, this leads us right into the next huge theme in Freakonomics, and that's the incredible power of information. Specifically, what happens when one person in a situation has a lot more information than the other person. And that brings us to, another one of these bizarre-sounding questions. How is the Ku Klux Klan like a group of real estate agents? I know, it sounds totally nuts and unrelated, but the book argues that both of these groups get a huge amount of their power from the exact same thing: knowing stuff that other people don't.
There's actually an economic term for this. It's called information asymmetry. It's basically any situation where one person, an expert like a doctor, a car mechanic, or yes, a real estate agent, knows way more than you do, and they can use that information advantage to help themselves, which, surprise, surprise, might not always be in your best interest.
Let's take that real estate agent. On the surface, it seems like your incentives are perfectly aligned, right? You both want to sell the house for the highest possible price. But let's actually look at the numbers. Let's say your agent works their tail off and gets you an extra $10,000 on the sale price. Awesome. You get most of that money. But the agent's share of that extra 10 grand? After the commission split, it might only be something like $150. So for them, is it really worth weeks of extra work for a measly $150? Or is it better to just sell the house fast for a pretty good price and move on to the next client?
And here's the proof. A massive study looked at almost 100,000 home sales in Chicago, and it found something fascinating. When real estate agents sell their own houses, they act totally differently. They keep their homes on the market for an average of 10 days longer, and they sell them for about 3% more money. The takeaway is pretty clear. When it's their own money on the line, they're willing to work a lot harder. And that right there proves the conflict of interest.
Okay, so we've seen how powerful incentives and information can be in shaping our world. So what's the last big idea from Freakonomics? It's all about using data to challenge what we call conventional wisdom. You know, those simple, convenient stories that everybody knows are true. And there is no better example of this than the story of crime back in the 1990s. At the time, the conventional wisdom, which was pushed by all the experts and politicians, was that we were on the verge of a massive crime wave. They talked about this new generation of teenage super predators, and the story was that crime was about to just explode.
But then a funny thing happened. That huge crime wave never showed up. Actually, the complete opposite happened. Starting in the mid-90s, the teen murder rate, and pretty much every other type of crime you can think of, didn't just stop rising, it plummeted. It dropped by over 50%. All those experts, they were completely, utterly wrong.
So the big question is, what caused this massive, totally unexpected drop in crime? People pointed to things like a strong economy or new policing strategies, but none of those really explained the full picture. The book, however, offers a much more controversial explanation. It links the crime drop to a legal decision that happened almost 20 years earlier, Roe v. Wade, the case that legalized abortion. Now, the argument goes like this. Legalized abortion meant that fewer unwanted children were born into really tough situations, like deep poverty or unstable homes. These are the exact environments that, statistically, are most likely to produce criminals down the line. So fast forward about 2 decades to when this generation that was never born would have been in their late teens and early 20s, their peak crime years. The theory is there were just fewer potential criminals around. And this is a brilliant illustration of a key point of the book. Sometimes the biggest, most dramatic effects have causes that are super distant and subtle, things that conventional wisdom just completely misses. So after all these wild stories, sumo wrestlers, real estate agents, crime rates, what's the big takeaway for us? Well, the book basically gives you a powerful new mental toolkit, a whole new way of looking at the world. So here are the key principles you can start using. Number 1, always follow the incentives. And remember, that includes moral ones, not just economic ones. Number 2, question conventional wisdom. Be skeptical of the things that everybody knows are true. 3, always be on the lookout for that information asymmetry, where one person knows more than another. And finally, number 4, maybe the most important one, remember that correlation does not equal causation. Just because 2 things happen at the same time doesn't mean one caused the other.
Once you start using this toolkit, you really can start to see the hidden side of everything around you. And so the book leaves us all with a final challenge, a question to think about. What piece of conventional wisdom in your own life, in your job, in your community, is just sitting there, waiting for someone like you to look at the data and prove it completely wrong?
And really, that's the core of Freakonomics. It's a radical, data-driven, and honestly, super fun way to understand how the world really works. Fatter wallets.